Welcome to WETS Community Forum. I'm Wayne Winkler. Today I'm talking with Benjamin Walls, a fine art photographer and the owner of the Benjamin Walls Gallery in Bristol. Thanks very much for being here with us today.
Oh, thank you, Wayne. Great to be here.
You've got a new travel business that you've just started up, and I want to talk with you about that. But first, I want to congratulate you on some of the awards that you've just won. You've won a couple of awards from Virginia Living magazine.
Yeah, I've been thrilled and honored to be recognized by Virginia Living in the Best Photographer category and also the Best Art Gallery category for the Benjamin Walls Gallery there in downtown Bristol. So very humbling and honored to be a part of that because it's picked by the readers and voted on by the readers.
You also won the 2017 Arts Achievement Award presented by AAME and A Magazine for the Arts. What was that one about?
Well, again, honored because this is a regional award and for folks in our region to recognize the hard work that not only myself but my entire team is putting forth in the arts world. Very humbled and honored. We do try to contribute to our local community and support the different organizations. I think a large part of that is the inspiration that we bring to the table, and ultimately that's the inspiration that I find in the natural world through my fine art photography. And so was recognized for that, and it feels great. I'm humbled.
How long have you had an art gallery on State Street?
We're getting ready to turn 7 years old, actually. So
that's 7 years, okay. Yeah. That's an anniversary.
Yeah.
Tell me about what people will find when they come into the Benjamin Walls Fine Art Gallery.
Well, my complete passion in life is sharing the natural world, and when I say world, it is worldwide. I am a Southern Appalachian native, and so from Bristol, and so we've got things in the gallery from all over our region: the Blue Ridge Parkway, the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, Roan Mountain, Grayson Highlands, on and on, but also images from across the country and around the world. And I really focus on 4 distinct genres. So I do abstract work, landscape work, black and white work, and also work with wildlife. And so you'll find a little bit of all of those genres. And from, like I said, from destinations around the world, I've got pieces from Africa and Australia, New Zealand, Alaska, Hawaii, India, and many other destinations. But I present all of my photography as fine art. I'm obsessed with capturing moments in the field and in our natural world that can be presented as art. So not really things that document what's there, but more images that still have the essence of art, just the way a painter would go into the field and paint a beautiful portrait or a beautiful landscape. And the elements that painter would look for, I'm looking for that with a camera. So
you do abstract, landscape, black and white, and wildlife photography. Which one is your favorite? First, which is your favorite, and then which is the most challenging?
That's a tricky question because I really enjoy all of them. I think the one that I find the most satisfaction with is the abstract work that I create because I'm trying to create abstract work from a real subject. In the natural world, of course, all of the things that I'm photographing are actually there. And so the abstract work really comes down to vision, and it comes down to the way that the image is cropped or the way that I don't give the viewer all of the information, and it builds a certain amount of intrigue and mystery. And I really enjoy that. Sometimes it's the simplest things in nature, just the ripples in a stream, or sometimes it's the way that the light's bouncing through the forest or whatever it may be. But it's things that typically you would walk by without a second glance. And I find great pride in finding and capturing those really rare moments and presenting them as abstract art.
Do you have an idea of what you're looking for, or do you just go out and see what you can find?
Well, with some of the other categories, I definitely do a lot of research and have more of an idea, I guess, in my mind. With the abstract category, and perhaps why it's one of my favorites, is because it's kind of by the seat of your pants. You've got to be in the field, and then you identify these things as you walk by or hike by or drive by or whatever it may be. And it's more about vision, and it's less about what you've gone there to capture, and more about what can I do with this stream, what can I do with the light that's bouncing off these leaves, and how can I portray that in a very artistic and abstract way.
Do you kind of discover some of your subjects after you've just taken a bunch of pictures and you look at the contact sheet and say, oh, look at that?
There's definitely a process of picking a favorite. But I feel like at this stage in my career, I have a pretty good feel for how the camera is going to translate the moment in the field, and hopefully it does that way. And my vision, is consistent all the way through, from seeing the image in the field to, having the actual final product hanging on the gallery wall.
It would seem to me that you've got a lot of variety in the way you can approach, say, a landscape as opposed to wildlife. Because with a landscape, you can pick out your place and look at it and frame it just right and say, okay, if I wait a couple more hours, the sun will be just in the right place. You can plan that out very meticulously. Wildlife, on the other hand, those rascals, they don't cooperate at all. They just do what they do, and you have to just catch them in the moment.
I couldn't have said it better. It's a different genre for sure, the wildlife work. But I'm still trying to bring in those elements, as I described earlier, that fall into the fine art genre. And a lot of this has to come back to vision as well. So I've got a new piece from East Africa I'm really excited about right now called Timbojaro, and it is a photograph of Mount Kilimanjaro with a parade of elephants moving in front of the mountain. And this is something that I had a vision for 10 years before it was actually realized. And so a lot of times with my wildlife work, or at least the way that I approach it, is you're trying to imagine or pair different subjects together. What's the absolute ultimate that this location could yield? And then pursuing that, is it possible to actually get those elephants to line up in front of the mountain in such a majestic way? And, it requires the most amount of patience sometimes, because as you described, their wildlife are always unpredictable. You don't know. And it forces you to learn the behavior of the animal and or groups of animals. And that gives you a better, understanding of where they may be and how they may behave. And then you can use all of that planning and predictive elements to your favor in order to get the image to line up for you.
You're listening to WETS Community Forum. I'm Wayne Winkler, and I'm talking with Benjamin Walls, the photographer and the owner of the Benjamin Walls Art Gallery in downtown Bristol. When we talked before, we talked about some of your travels, the trips you take to get these photographs. And recently, you've started a series of trips where people can go along with you, more or less, and see some of the same places that you've traveled to. Now, tell me about that.
Absolutely. I'm really excited about this. It's a brand new company, separate company. We do have a display at the Benjamin Walls Gallery in downtown Bristol that tells all about the trips. But the company's called WALLSabout. It's a play on the word walkabout, the Aussie term walkabout, but it's WALLSABOUT, and you can see information on that at wallsabout.com. But this company, we focus on the actual experience where I myself or my guides are taking people on these trips. We've started 4 new destinations, Africa, Cuba, Australia, and New Zealand. And in each of these destinations, it's all about the experience of the person coming on the trip. It's not a photography tour, but a luxury experience. And I guess I'm so jazzed about this and excited because with all of my artwork that I've created, I really see an opportunity for me to share the natural world with people. And in this new venture, in this business, now I'm getting to share the natural world with folks in person. And it's a lot of fun to see people's eyes light up the very first time they see an elephant, for example, or the very first time that they make it to one of these extraordinary destinations.
How did you come up with the idea of bringing other people along on these trips that you've been making for years on your own?
Well, actually, it kind of happened organically. Folks know that I've been to Africa many times, for example, or Australia for many different trips. And so folks were coming to the gallery and asking me for travel advice. And then I had a certain number of collectors that were asking me, hey, we want to go along with you on a trip. And I would say, no, you would hate it. I get up too early to take photos and all this stuff. And they said, no, we don't want to do that, silly. We want to go on a nice experience and a trip, and we want you to organize it for us. So that's how it really grew organically. And with the demand that's there for that, then I've kind of formed this new company. And again, it's all about getting folks in just some of the most incredible destinations around the world and making sure they have a wonderful experience. And I guess the really key element with this is we're leveraging my experience. For example, in East Africa, I have got wonderful contacts. I've got the guides that I've worked with over the years, and the gentleman that does all the bookings for me at the different lodges. I know the lodges that are in better locations for the wildlife. I know the lodges that are in worse locations. And so when I'm curating this experience for our groups, I think it's really important for me to be able to select the best locations, not for the overall experience. So there's perhaps less of a drive in the morning in order to get to the wildlife. And, if you've got a guide that has a better personality and a better know-how with the movement of the vehicle and the knowledge of the wildlife, you're going to have a better experience. And so because I've kind of gone and, stumped my toes on the guides that weren't the best, or the companies that weren't the best, or the lodges that weren't the best, I've got that experience, and I can put people in the very best locations.
How did you choose the locations that you've chosen? For example, next year you're going to be going to Cuba, Australia, New Zealand, and Africa. Mm-hmm. How did you pick those particular locations?
Well, with Africa, Australia, and New Zealand, all three of those were destinations that I have an extreme amount of experience and had an extreme amount of experience with. And so I felt like those were the ones that I was best suited to curate the trip. And they were also the ones that people were asking about the most. Cuba is kind of the wild card because I didn't have a lot of experience there.
Most Americans don't.
Right,
it's kind of a new destination for Americans.
Exactly. But that's the thing. Folks are they knew I had a ton of travel experience, and I had a lot of clients say, well, take us to Cuba. And I thought, well, I need to get my butt down there and take a look and see how things are going with the new regulations and the new stipulations. You are allowed to legally travel to Cuba. There are some hoops that you have to jump through. And so I've spent a tremendous amount of time this year figuring out all of those logistics. I went to Cuba myself for a couple of weeks, met with the guides, went to the different restaurants, stayed at the different facilities there, and was able to really get a good feel for the country and eliminate some things that I wouldn't take folks back on a group trip, and then pick the ones that I really think would be great for the group. We've assembled that and worked really hard on it. So this was the toughest one to assemble, but also one that I'm really proud about because, it's a new destination altogether.
You've got a trip scheduled for Cuba in January. Where will you be going? Havana, obviously, but where else?
Havana is definitely the hub, and we've got an itinerary where travelers can just go to Havana for a 6-day itinerary, and then if they want to extend that, then we're going to go over to Cienfuegos, Trinidad, and up to Santa Clara and Santa Maria. So there are some other destinations along the trip. Havana is spectacular, and the architecture, the old cars, many of the things that you probably imagine when you think of Cuba, but then it's just, there's so much depth there. The people are so kind, and they're so excited about some of the changes that are happening in the government and the ability of Americans to travel there. I just feel like, to sum up with Cuba, I feel like it's an absolute time capsule. Now is the time, whether you travel with my company or you go on your own or some other way. I think now is the time to go, and it's just incredible what you will find there.
It's going to be changing a lot pretty quickly.
It's going to change fast, and I can't say, of course, whether that change will be, positive, negative, who knows, but it will be different. And right now, I think it's such a unique place to see that time capsule of the 40s and 50s cars, the incredible colonial architecture, and just a really welcoming and humble people right now. It's just a spectacular destination.
How many people will you be taking on this and your other trips? Is there a minimum number and a maximum number?
We want to take at least 6 as kind of a minimum for us, and a maximum with each trip is a little different, but 12 to 15. We want to keep the groups really small. It depends trip to trip. With East Africa, for example, we limit vehicles that are normally made for 8 to 9 people, which are these nice big 4x4 safari vehicles that Toyota makes, and they custom outfit there in Tanzania. And we limit them to 5 people per vehicle. So we want to make it, very comfortable, exclusive, have plenty of room to move around. And then, we also have to consider the lodges. We stay in more bespoke and boutique lodges. So, the capacity is not there for mass tourism in any way. So we definitely want to stay, small groups all the way.
So you'll be going to Cuba in January. In February, you'll be going to Australia, and in March to New Zealand. Australia and New Zealand may seem a little bit more comfortable to Americans, or at least more familiar. They speak English there, of a sort. I mean, maybe not the kind of English we speak here, but they are understandable. What sort of things will people be doing in Australia, for example?
Well, in Australia and New Zealand, I've partnered with, and all of these trips, I partner with in-country guides. Our in-country guide in Australia and New Zealand is a good mate of mine, and actually spoke with him this morning. And but we'll be going all over the country, seeing really what I feel like are the highlights. I've spent over a year and a half of my life in Australia. And it was really tough to cull that down to a 10-day and a 14-day itinerary. But we're going to start off in Melbourne, which is the big city down south in Victoria, Australia. We're going to head out the Great Ocean Road. We've got some highlights to see, some penguins and some seals and some other wildlife, kangaroos and koalas, of course, down on Phillip Island. Then we're going to buzz up to Central Australia, see the big rock in Central Australia. The natives there call it Uluru. And then we're going to fly over to Cairns, the Great Barrier Reef, and see the reef in a number of different ways where opportunities there from snorkeling to diving or flying over the reef. And then down to Sydney for our final destination to see, Australia's New York, basically, this wonderful city that's set right on the bay. It's one of the most picturesque cities in the world, and so many different things to see and do there, from the museums to the harbor tour, bridge climb, the Taronga Zoo, et cetera, et cetera. Just so many things. I couldn't mention them all. And so really excited about that trip.
You used the word luxury to describe the destinations and accommodations that people will be experiencing on these trips. You're going to several different places. Will there be luxurious accommodations at all of these places?
Absolutely. We want to make sure that our guests are very, very comfortable. We are, one of the concepts with WALLSabout is you are hiring us to take care of all of the details. So you pay the fees to us, and we're going to, even before the trip, months before the trip, we're going to prepare you with where to get your vaccines, where to get your visas, how to do this. And so, the luxury begins with an incredible service, the hometown service that we provide for each of our participants. Then once we get on the trip, yes, we're staying in very nice accommodations. With each destination, it's a little bit different. For example, in Cuba, we stay in the nicest accommodations that are available, but it's not opulent, let's say. It is a luxury accommodation for their standards. And in Africa and Australia and New Zealand, we stay in some very nice accommodations. I think all of our guests will be well pleased. And in these facilities, there's a lot of amenities like beautiful pools and hot tubs. And of course, it varies by property, but even spa services, the architecture and the design and the service in all of these resorts are really, really top end. And, we want to cater to a clientele that want to basically book with us and not have to worry about another thing. And we know that we're going to meet their standards and expectations. And I think that's what my clients at the gallery demand. And that's what we're trying to bring that same level of service over to the travel business.
Are you going to be interacting with the travelers personally every day?
Actually, this first year, I'm actually personally going on each trip, this 2018 year that's coming up. So we've had the business in 2016 and 2017, but each destination in 2018, I'm going to be there. The reason for that is I'm really obsessed with making sure that everything goes really perfectly. I'm still, working hand in hand with our in-country guides every day. And then after this year, a lot of those trips will be handed over to a trip director, and they will accompany the participants. So I'm telling folks, if you want to travel with me, come along. This is the year. And in the future, we'll still provide that exceptional level of service, but I'm only one human being, and of course I've got my artwork that I'm very passionate about, so I won't be going along on each and every trip. So
You're listening to WETS Community Forum. I'm Wayne Winkler, and I'm talking with photographer Benjamin Walls, the owner of the Benjamin Walls Gallery in downtown Bristol, and the proprietor of WALLSabout, a new travel service that will be going to some of the exotic destinations that Benjamin goes on his photography trips. Who are you looking for as travelers on these trips? Are you looking for older people, younger people? To whom are these trips aimed?
Well, I'm looking for folks that want a wonderful service and love to have fun. And we've got an age group that range from, I've got a family of 4 booked right now, on one of our trips, and their kids are 12 and 13. We've got some folks, in their 60s and 70s that have gone on the trip. So really, age is not an issue. Come as you are, and we definitely take into consideration all the different factors that go in with the participants that are coming. We have a lot of optional activities where we will have a scheduled activity planned for a particular day. For example, in New Zealand, we're going to do a hike around one of the glaciers, but you also that same day have the opportunity, if you'd prefer, to do a hike on the glacier with crampons on. So if you're a little more adventurous, you can get into that. And then if you're extremely adventurous that day, you can take a helicopter tour up to the top of one of the glaciers and do some ice climbing and crampon walking and things like that, or maybe get down in the crevasse. So we really try to tailor it, even though you're in a group of 10, 12 people, whatever it may be, we're still able to tailor the different destinations to meet your physical activities that you want to do and kind of your fitness levels and things like that. So yeah, and then we also do, and this is really important to note, we also do custom trips. So we're working right now with a family of 5 to do a custom Africa safari, so they would be the only ones on the trip. And that's certainly an opportunity there. And also a possibility would be to do corporate trips. If you had a company that wanted to have, a particular team that just wanted to travel to one of these destinations, we can arrange that as well. One of the really key things in this is once I've established the right guides and the right contacts in these different companies, we can tailor the trip however it needs to be for a custom group.
You'll be going to Cuba in January, a nice time in the middle of winter to be down in the Caribbean where it's going to be nice and warm. In February, you'll be in Australia, and in March, New Zealand. And in the Southern Hemisphere, that's summertime. How did you choose these times for these trips?
Well, I've been pretty strategic all the way along. Walking around Havana in January is a delight. I wouldn't want to do it in July, So I've picked that for that reason. Australia, New Zealand, this is a wonderful time to go from a climate standpoint, but also this is the end of it's just past the Australian summer holiday, and so you're not just packed in with other tourists and all the different destinations. So we're trying to miss the crowds but still get the great weather. So that's the reason to pick Australia and New Zealand. And then in Africa, we're going in July, which sounds hot, but it's actually the coolest month of the year there in East Africa. We're just south of the equator, and they have more of a wet season, dry season, and it is a little cooler in the July month than it is the rest of the year. So
that's something that most people wouldn't have guessed, or at least I wouldn't have guessed, that July would be the most comfortable month to visit East Africa.
Yeah, and that is really the thing. I mean, this company has really been based on my experience of, well, you wouldn't think to be in this lodge, or you wouldn't think to be at this time of the year, or you wouldn't think to have to be at, for example, Milford Sound in the morning because you wouldn't want to be there in the afternoon with all the tourists that are coming in. It's a better experience. So there's just 1,000 decisions that are packed into those itineraries, and those little decisions add up to a better experience. And that's why I started this company. I wanted to give people the best experience possible.
You're listening to WETS Community Forum. I'm Wayne Winkler, and I'm talking with Benjamin Walls, an award-winning photographer and the owner of the Benjamin Walls Fine Art Gallery on State Street in downtown Bristol. We're talking about WALLSabout, a new travel service operated by Benjamin and utilizing his travel experience to offer these trips to the public. And in January, WALLSabout will be going to Cuba, to Australia in February, New Zealand in March, and Africa in July. Are there other destinations that you have in mind? Are you making plans to expand this, or are there places that you would like to look into?
Absolutely. We've got to make sure that these 4 destinations are solid and running well first, of course. But I've got a number of destinations in the back of my mind. I probably shouldn't comment on the exact ones, but we're also taking recommendations. So if you're listening and you've got a place that you've always wanted to travel and maybe would like to do that with WALLSabout, give us a call or just give me the tip that this is a place you'd like to travel. That's how Cuba happened. That's why we're going to Cuba this year, is based on our participants' requests from the past couple of years. Cuba was one of the top destinations that were requested. And so, absolutely, I want to grow this company as well, but that starts with an exceptional service and making sure our first participants are thrilled with what they're doing, and that's what's happened thus far. Our second and third and fourth trips have been much easier to book because the folks that are coming back from our first trips were so thrilled with the service and the trip overall that they told their friends, and now some of their friends are coming along with us. So I really am a big believer that making sure that the service is right on these first four destinations is what I'm focused on right now.
Now, these are trips that will probably require some planning. They're not, impromptu, spur of the moment kind of vacations. They're trips that will require visas, in some cases vaccinations, I would presume. How far in advance should people be making plans to be on one of these trips? As you said, the first one starts in January to Cuba. When should people start making plans to do this?
I'm talking to you at the perfect time, because here we are in July. The trips in January, February, and March, which is Cuba, Australia, New Zealand, now is the perfect time to start planning. You're far enough in advance to easily get through all of the requirements, and we'll step you through each one of those requirements as far as visas and vaccinations and planning. We take care of all of that for you, so that's perfect timing. But it's not even too early to book with us to do Africa 2018. So we'll be going to Africa July 2018, and it's not too early to start booking that trip as well. We do offer a number of different payment plans, and so folks like to make a monthly payment on that trip once a month, all the way up until the date that you leave on the trip. Makes it a little bit more affordable and a little less to cough up all at once. So that's an option and another reason to book early. But that being said, folks can book only a month or so in advance, and we can still make all the accommodations for them if there's the availability.
That's what I was going to say, as long as you haven't filled it up to the capacity that you want to take.
And one important thing that I should say, this year, in order to really get off on the right foot with our new destinations, we're offering special pricing on our first 6 participants. This is something I don't anticipate doing in future years. It's something that I want to do this year to really spur on the business and get the bookings out there. So, and many of the trips already have a few participants booked on them. So if you're interested in the introductory pricing, definitely check us out sooner than later, because those spaces go fast.
Where can people find out more information, including the destinations where you're going to be staying, the prices, and all of that? Where can people find out that information?
A great place to start is at the Benjamin Walls Gallery in downtown Bristol, where my staff can walk you through that in detail. But also, you can go to WALLSabout.com. That's WALLSABOUT. WALLSabout.com, and we've got information there on all 4 of the destinations, the trip pricing, videos and photos from our previous trips, and you can find out a lot of information there. But we encourage you to call or come by the gallery, because gosh, there's just so many details that you can't fit onto a website. And again, personal service is what it's about with us, and we're a friendly bunch down there at the Benjamin Walls Gallery, so I think when people come in or call, it's always rewarding.
Well, we've covered a lot of material. Is there anything that you would like to mention that I haven't asked or brought up?
Gosh, there's so much to cover with the travel business. I just want to reiterate that I'm thrilled to be able to offer this service here in the Tri-Cities. This is not a normal a company that you would find in this size market. And it's a lot of fun to show people the wonders of our incredible world that we live in. And to do that as an artist has always been a passion of mine. And now to be able to do it in person with a travel company is a lot of fun. So I feel very blessed to be able to offer this and offer this service to our region.
I've been talking with Benjamin Walls about his latest venture, WALLSabout Travel, and you can find out more at benjaminwalls.com, or preferably visit the gallery at 701 State Street in downtown Bristol. Benjamin, congratulations on your new venture and on your most recent awards.
Wayne, thank you so much for having me.
For WETS Community Forum, I'm Wayne Winkler.